Right. So welcome to part B of our first lecture session in the IPPF concept, which is topic 1 in your study guide. Now, we're talking about the principle of integrity. As we're just about to discuss it in detail, but I was just explaining in video A about how these things can be examined, especially from an application point of view or an essay-based type of a question. It can be in a setup whereby they would ask you to do this. But this is something that they also tested you at third year level, right? But in this level, there will not be too much of questions like this. There might be, but I mean, it's just going to be a few, where they are dealing with this. Especially with scenarios. I've noticed it in assignments. It can be a 6-mark question where they ask you to identify whether the chief audit executive have violated the IPPF elements, something of that nature, but not contributing so much. Why is it like that? Because, I mean, they've tested a lot about this at second year rather, and third year level at undergrad. So they can't really be continually testing you on that same principle. They have to enhance, continue to test you on other things rather. But without further ado, let's begin to look at the first principle, which is principle of integrity. With the principle of integrity, there are 4 rules of conduct of note that you need to be aware of. Number 1 is that internal auditors shall perform their work with honesty, diligence, and responsibility, shall observe the law, make disclosures expected by the law, as well as the profession of internal auditing. We shall not knowingly be a party to any illegal activity or engage in acts that are discreditable to the profession of internal auditing or even to that of the organization. And lastly, we shall respect as well as to contribute to the legitimate and ethical objectives of organization. These are your 4 important rules of conduct that supports or that describes integrity principle of internal auditing. Right. Are we together?
Yes.
Then the second principle, it's the principle of objectivity. Now, what are the rules of conduct surrounding objectivity? Number 1, we shall not participate in any activity or even relations that would impair or could presumably impair our unbiased assessment. So this participation includes those activities or even relations which could result in conflict of interest in the organization. The moment you have something like that, it means there is a probability that your objectivity as an auditor could be impaired. The moment you identify anything of that nature, in the process of doing your responsibilities to the client or to your employer, what you then need to do under those circumstances, you may need to bring them to the attention of the audit committee or the chief audit executive in question. That's what you need to do. Right. Number 2, okay, just a second. Number 2, you shall not accept anything that may impair or be presumed to impair your professional judgment. If there's anything that can, impair your professional judgment, this can be you in the case where you receive or accept a gift, which is material in terms of monetary value. Then you will have a problem.
Yeah.
See now. So then number 3, we shall disclose all the material facts known to us, that if we don't disclose them, it might distort the purpose of the engagement that we would have been assigned to perform. Those are your rules of conduct with respect to objectivity. Confidentiality, like I'd already explained them earlier, we shall be prudent in the use of and the protection of information acquired in the course of our duties We shall not use the information for personal gain, neither shall we use it in a way that is contrary to the law or contrary to the legitimate and ethical objectives of the organization. Right. Very important. Very important aspects to consider. Then lastly, but not least, is competency principle. Just got 3 important rules of conduct of note. The first one is that we shall engage only in those services for which we have experienced the necessary knowledge, experience, as well as the skill levels. If you're not experienced, if you're not informed in a particular area, not skilled in a particular audit, internal audit area, you should withdraw from performing responsibilities. Right. And then number 2, we shall perform our services in accordance with the IPPF standards of internal auditing. Then lastly, we shall continually improve our proficiency and effectiveness and the quality of our services. Hence, if you go to the IPPF standard, there's this standard here, which I'm going to show you now, the next slide. Sorry, after, yeah, this one here. IPPF standard 1300. It's an attribute standard, standard 1300, dealing with quality assurance and improvement program. Right. This particular one, it's communicating with this and this, where we are expected to perform our services in accordance with the standards, and obviously continually improve our proficiency and effectiveness as internal auditors and the quality of our work. So it's that aspect or rule of conduct of the competency principle of the IAA Code of Ethics speaks not only to 1300, which is on quality assurance as well as improvement program, but it also communicates to standard 1200 on proficiency and due professional care, internal auditing. Now, that was to explain to you the 4 principles of internal auditing and the rules of conduct therein. Now, we're going to also look at the IPPF standards, but for today, I will not explain the IPPF standards in detail. The only thing I'll do is to just give you the outline of the IPPF standards. But anyways, what is the purpose of the standards? IPPF standards, they delineate the basic principles that represent the practice of internal auditing. They provide the framework for performing as well as promoting a broad range of value-added internal auditing. So it gives us that framework to allow us to know how to perform certain internal audit engagements, you know. And it's also established the basis for evaluation, internal audit performance. So in other words, it also deals with the work we do. How is it evaluated so that we can be in a position where it's considered to be up to standard? And it also fosters improved organizational processes and operations. So when we look at the IPPF standards, not only does it deal with the person of the internal auditor, it deals with the work of the internal auditor, how the work of the internal auditor ought to be done, how it ought to be evaluated and improved, obviously, to ensure that it's aligning to the objective of the organization in question. And number 4, it also deals with the organization itself. How do the services of internal auditors improve organizational processes, improve the way an organization is operating? That's operations. So there are 3 focus areas in which us as internal auditors, through our services, this is how we improve, add value to an organization. This is through risk management processes, control processes, as well as the governance process. Right. So if I look at the IPPF standards outline, it's made up of 2 groups. So there's attribute standards as well as performance standards. Attribute standards, they address the characteristic of the organization and the parties performing the internal audit activities themselves. So in other words, attribute standards deals with the organization itself, characteristics of the organization. It also deals with, but in more detail, it deals with the person of the internal auditor. That's what attribute standards is all about. And that's what they attribute as the standard 1000 series, or rather the 1000 series rather, because the standard itself is called attribute standards, but it's also, of course, titled the 1000 series. Then performance standards describes the nature of our work as internal auditors and provide the quality criteria against which our work can be evaluated. That's why you notice when you go to, for instance, standard 2200 all the way up to standard 2500, what is happening there? It's dealing with the engagement process, audit engagement process, which is engagement planning, performing engagement, communicating the results, and monitoring progress. That's the audit engagement process right there. Our nature of work is explained here. And our nature of work, remember, it's based off on what? On three things, which is governance processes, risk management processes, and the control processes. That's what they'll be dealing with at standard 2100. Managing the internal audit activity, it tallies with this topic here that you'll be dealing with. Topic 4, establishing, administrating, and management of the internal audit activity. So when you come to topic 4, there's going to be a lot about standard 2000 that you'll be taking from that. But this obviously is introduced or was introduced to you at AUI 3704 level. Right. So in our next session, which will be lecture 2, I'll be dealing detailed discussion about the IPPF standards, and we'll also look at some practical examples and some practical questions. Right. Do you have any questions for me?
No, because that time I was just listening to the recording. Now when you explain more, I can understand much better.
It's enhancing. I'm enhancing.
Yes. It's enhancing.
That's wonderful. So CSP, let's proceed with it on next week, where we'll get more into details on this, and we'll take it from there.